This Patreon extra video, it's kind of a follow-up to the Salt Shaker Jarrell Miller edition I did a few months ago. In that video, I talked about Miller, the current course he was on with his career, the soft opponents, but also the insistence of going the WBA route. He was insistent that was what he was doing to try get a belt or a version of a heavyweight title to have as leverage in negotiations for a bigger fight down the line. But now, a few months later, we're 2019 now, Jarrell Miller is doing a complete about-face. Remember, for the best part of the last year, Jarrell Miller, I've got trucks in the background here, so apologies for the background noise, Jarrell Miller has basically been forging this relentless path in the WBA, saying that he wants the strap from Manuel Charr, he wants a version of a heavyweight title, he wants to face Trevor Bryan, and as recently as just December, he was saying he wanted Trevor Bryan, wanted to beat him up, that they were making calls to Don King, wanting the fight. But now, the about face. So on the Boxing Voice, he confirmed that he wants no part of this WBA tournament that, or mini tournament, or it's being described as a tournament that the WBA is trying to establish. And in that, they're going to have Manuel Charr, who's been recently cleared of PED violations, murky circumstances. Effectively, the WBA didn't want the court battle because of procedural issues with the B sample. Very murky. But anyway, Charr is back on the board now. He's a piece on the board. He will get that long-awaited fight with Freza Kendo scheduled for March 2019. And the other guy who's been ordered to have a fight is Trevor Bryan, the interim WBA world champion, and that was to be with Jarrell Miller. So Miller was the WBA mandatory to Charr's belt, but obviously things hadn't happened there. So the WBA has ordered him to face Trevor Bryan. And as I just detailed, it's a fight that he's been wanting, calling for, and there's history there with Trevor Bryan. They go back, they've got some beef. He's been calling him out relentlessly for some time. He wants to fight him, but now Miller said he doesn't want any part of this tournament. And it was a very brief clip, didn't go into too much detail. And towards the end he was asked, well, what's it going to take for you to get in that fight? And he said, money. And that's really what all of this is coming down to in some respect. There's a couple of points to go through that I just wanted to touch on quickly. One, for Trevor Bryan and Jarrell Miller. If it's an ordered fight, if they're going to have that, Jarrell Miller is going to be the B-side in that on the financial terms, because they're going to have to, do a split with Trevor Bryan being the champion, bigger than Jarrell Miller. So the WBA, what is it, 70-30 or whatever it is, Jarrell Miller will get the smaller chunk of the pie. And I'm sure Trevor Bryan, Don King, they'll force it to a purse, but they're not going to agree to terms unless it was silly money. And who's backing Jarrell Miller right now with silly money? Nobody. So he's going to get the smaller end of the pie there. And he knows this. And this is why he doesn't want to take the fight. But also there's other considerations at play here, because if he locked himself into a fight with Trevor Bryan, albeit at smaller money, he may be off the table for a fight with Anthony Joshua. There's still some bits and pieces sort of floating around that he is, if not next, down the line with Anthony Joshua. But this is the thing. That's also coming down to money. We're hearing that negotiations haven't gone well with Dillian Whyte. There's an offer to Whyte, but now there's an offer to Jarrell Miller. And apologies if you're listening months down the line to this video, but this is good context anyway in terms of Jarrell Miller's career, what he's been doing, and the situation at hand at this point in time, end of January 2019. And Miller's been given an offer, and we're also hearing that there's a distance between what he wants and what Anthony Joshua is prepared to pay him. Because if a fight with Dillian Whyte isn't made, Jarrell Miller is the next cab off the rank by the looks of it. And he will want as much as possible. And if he's involved with a Trevor Bryan fight, he can't take that fight. But he will want to keep his card clear just to see what happens. And he's already urging, and I've just seen this on Instagram, Dillian Whyte to hurry up and make his mind up what he's doing, because he wants to know what he's doing with Joshua if Whyte isn't fighting him. So it's all a bit messy and murky, but Jarrell Miller, after a year or so of just going down relentlessly the WBA path, is all of a sudden turning his back on it. It brings me back to, well, what's he been doing for the last 6 months? Because he's faced Thomas Adamek And Bogdan Dino, nothing fights, no one wanted to see. He got hardly any credit. His credibility with fans was damaged. And he was saying he was doing all of that in pursuit of a WBA title belt. He's been denying that he's been taking easy fights, talking up the opposition, but he is eking it out until he gets a title fight. He will sell that O for millions of dollars, and this is what he's trying to do with the offer that he's had from Anthony Joshua. Because until now, we had heard that it was just, discussions, nothing concrete. That was what Dimitri Salita, Miller's promoter of record, had said. But now we know there is some sort of offer, but it's not the offer he's liking. And he will try to squeeze for as much as possible. But you have to also, in this context, think about where he's come from in the division in such a short space of time, from basically doing nothing. Less than a year ago, and I reported this at the time, he said he would take $800,000 to fight Dillian Whyte. So this was before his DAZN deal, before he was getting, decent money for facing nobody opponents. And since that time, he's only had the 2 fights against Adamek and Dinu, overmatched opponents, expected to beat, did nothing for his credibility. And now he's holding out for millions and millions of dollars. And I guarantee you, if you were to ask him today, how much would you want for a Dillian Whyte fight? If they were to fight, he would be saying millions. You can guarantee it. So in a short space of time, basically off the back of hype, bluster, promotion from Matchroom's own Eddie Hearn, Miller has built his profile and apparently his worth, and I think he's overestimating his place in the division and how much he's really worth, but that's another story. But, going from where he was to where he is now, with a potential fight for a title with Anthony Joshua for millions of dollars, and this is what he wants. He wants several $1 million. He wants to sell that O from wanting $800,000 to face Dillian Whyte a year ago. He really has come quite a long way, and you've got to respect the guy for building up that commercial value. He's done some of that on the back of his mouth, but also largely on the back of Eddie Hearn, trying to promote him, build him up. Remember, there was that UK promotional tour he did before Christmas 2018. They're trying to build this guy as a legitimate opponent for Anthony Joshua and for DAZN in general in the United States. They've got work to do. But when you really cast your mind back to where he was and what he was saying at the time less than a year ago, he's certainly asking for much more now. But it does surprise me that he's turning his back after being so belligerent with his WBA route that now, he's not entering that tournament. And it begs the question, why did he even bother pursuing that route in the first place? Clearly some of what's going on now is tactical, but if you examine where he's come from, what he's done well for himself in one regard, but also, he hasn't really fought anyone of note to deserve that title shot. If he'd have taken that Kubrat Pulev fight, we wouldn't be having any of this conversation at all, because he probably would have been in a shot with Anthony Joshua for a title by now.